Good afternoon. Happy Monday. A lot of people in my comment section in the last couple of videos were upset that I kept saying reasonable suspicion and not reasonable suspicion of a crime. And there's a good reason for that. It's because the Supreme Court doesn't require there to be reasonable suspicion of a crime in order to detain someone. They require reasonable suspicion that crime is afoot or there's criminal activity, not that there is a crime. You don't have to articulate facts that would lead a reasonable person to believe that a specific crime was underway. You just have to have facts that support a reasonable suspicion that there's criminal activity or crime is afoot. One of the classic bases for reasonable suspicion is failing to promptly stop after a cop attempts to pull you over, like for an infraction. Your tail lights out, cop lights you up, you have to stop, right? If you don't stop promptly, well, the further you go, the more likely it is the cop will have a reasonable suspicion of some criminal activity taking place in your vehicle, which means that he gets to investigate what may be causing that. Why didn't you stop? He can investigate it. Whereas if you just promptly stop, unless other factors come into play, like he smells weed, unless other factors come into play, all he can do is write you that ticket for the tail light and let you go on your way. He can't keep you there to investigate why it took you so long to stop. That's classic. Go wherever you want to. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it's one of the things that can give reasonable suspicion. In all of these, the court's going to look at the totality of the circumstances. You'll see that over and over again. So you look at all the circumstances. Failing to stop in a timely fashion doesn't necessarily mean that the cop's going to have reasonable suspicion, but it could justify reasonable suspicion. So, a more specific case that I really like, because of the fact pattern I think is so awesome. Now, I want to state for the record that I don't think reasonable suspicion should be grounds to detain someone. I don't think there should be any seizures without probable cause. The Supreme Court disagrees with me. All of the other courts in the land disagree with me. That's my personal opinion. As an opinion, it can't be wrong. But by the same token, nobody thinks that my opinion is worth a damn. I'm only telling you my opinion because this case doesn't say, ha-ha, I'm right, or that my opinion should be right. This case says, ha-ha, you're wrong, and you should be wrong. But I'm telling it to you anyway. The case is People v. Foranyic. Now, one of the reasons why I like it is because it's a California case, which, I'm in California, part of the reason why I like it. Another part of the reason why I like it is because it is a criminal case. And criminal cases, I think, are dealt with better than a motion to dismiss based on 12b-6, the qualified immunity. I think that the courts take a better look at it than in a criminal case than they do in a civil case. I think they deal with it as a more weighty issue. And where you come across in a civil case is to try to suppress evidence. Fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine, you may have heard of it, you may not have. But basically, if you get stopped without probable cause or reasonable suspicion, and based on that stop, the cops find some incriminating thing, like they discover drugs on you or a unlicensed firearm or whatever. If they didn't have the probable cause or the reasonable suspicion that supported whatever it is they did, then you can suppress all the stuff they found, in theory. Some exceptions may apply, blah, blah, blah. And that will hinder or maybe even prohibit the state from being able to successfully convict you of that crime. So in this particular case, Foranyic, the guy was on a bike, Huntington Beach. I think it was Huntington Beach. Well, we'll say it's Huntington Beach. So I think that's Southern California. On a bike, just standing astride it, not riding it, just standing astride the bike. So it's between his legs, but he's not pedaling it. He's just standing there, which isn't an issue, right? It's 3 a.m. Well, now it's getting a little, what are you doing out on a bike at 3 a.m.? And then the piece de resistance is there's an axe, like a woodsman's axe, like a lumberjack axe, like a wood chopping axe, strapped to the bike. So the cop approaches him. No, well, let me rephrase that. A cop does not approach him. The cop instead says, hey, get off the bike and come here. The Foranyic, the defendant, tries to get off the bike. I think he has some issues. The cop can tell at that point he's intoxicated or inebriated, and eventually pats him down, finds, I think, meth. I want to say meth, but some drug, right? So Foranyic wants to suppress the finding of the drugs and finding of the intoxication, so he can't get charged with public intoxication, right? So all the cop has to work with is dude standing on a bike at 3 a.m. with a large axe strapped to the bike. That's all the cop has. So the court has to answer two questions. One, was Foranyic seized? And two, did the cop have reasonable suspicion to support the seizure? That's what the court has to deal with, right? So as to the first question, was Foranyic seized? Yes, he was. Why? Because the cop said, hey, get off your bike. And Foranyic tried to get off his bike. Foranyic complied. It's like if the cop turns on his lights and siren to pull you over, if you haven't pulled over, you're not detained. Once you've complied and you've pulled over, now you're detained, right? So once Foranyic decided to comply with the cop's order to get off the bike, even though he was apparently unsuccessful or had troubles or something like that getting off the bike, once he decided to comply, once he complied, he was seized. So yes, he was seized. Before the cop had any evidence of the intoxication or the drugs, Foranyic was seized. So the question is, why did the cop tell him to get off the bike? What was the cop's reasonable suspicion? And the cop said, hey, I was just trying to get him away from the axe. I didn't want to approach him because dude had an axe strapped to his bike. I wanted him to get away from the axe so I could deal with him, figure out what the heck was going on, why the dude was out on a bike at 3 a.m. with an axe. So what crime? He didn't articulate a specific crime. He's just like, something's wrong here. There's criminal activity afoot. I don't know what it is. I don't know why. But I know homeboy's not a lumberjack. And I know he's not out fighting fires. But he's got an axe. At night. 3 a.m. on a bike. Something's wrong. I got to investigate. The court's like, yeah, you had to investigate. Like, he ain't fighting fires. He ain't lumberjacking. These circumstances were so unusual, they literally cried out for investigation. You don't have to have you don't have to be able to say a specific crime as a cop. You don't have to say a specific crime. You don't have to say trespass. You don't have to say attempted murder. You don't have to say armed robbery. You don't have to say anything like that. You don't have to articulate facts that, combined with your training and experience, would lead a reasonably prudent person to assume that there's crime afoot, to come to the reasonable suspicion crime is afoot. I have no idea what I just said there. You don't have to articulate a specific crime. You don't have to say that it's a specific crime. That's all the court was saying. Like, these facts are so unusual that you don't need to articulate a specific crime. So what does that mean? It means a specific crime is not required. The cop doesn't have to have reasonable suspicion of a crime. He has to have reasonable suspicion that crime is afoot. Reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. One of those two. So anyway, I hope that makes sense. You don't have to have a reasonable suspicion of a crime. Sorry. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.